Hi guys, my name's Callum and you're joining me here today at Tunnel Barn Farm. Now Tunnel Barn Farm somewhere I've been going a lot recently through the winter months and as it started to warm up, and it's somewhere I've really enjoyed fishing. There's just so many fish in here, it really is unbelievable. Today we're going to go through some tactics and tips on how I would tackle a venue like this in these conditions. I mean, it's been 6, 8, 10 degrees all week, but it's started to warm up now, 17, 18 degrees. So the tactics are going to change as the weather does. Today, I've sat on Jenny's Pool Peg 16. I'm going to look to start the day in the margins with soft pellets and micros, which is a great way of starting any match because it always seems like you get a good little response initially at the start of the match when starting like this. All the time when I'm fishing in the margins, I'm going to be loose feeding casters shallow. Now really that is the method where if you're going to win today, which I think you're going to probably have to catch in excess of 200 pounds, that's the method which you're going to do it on. So I'm going to build it up all the time whilst I'm fishing in the margins, catch as much as I can in the margins and then look to move on to that. Last resort, I have got a far margin swim which I can go to if I really can't catch, but like I said before, you're going to need probably 200 pounds to win today, so those two methods are going to be the one for me, but we will cover that at a later date in the day. So yeah, that's the three things I'm going to be looking at. I'm going to jump on the box, have a fish and go through all the little details and little tricks I use to maximise your peg. Right, I'm going to look to start my day in the margins. Now one of the biggest things for me when fishing in the margins is finding the correct depth. Around 16 to 22 inches is where I want to be fishing. I know it sounds a bit precise, but it really does make a difference when you're fishing in the margins. If you fish in too deep a water, the fish tend to come up the bank and you tend to foul look a lot. And if you fish in too shallow water, the fish might not come in. It's all about finding that balance. And I find 16 to 22 inches is about right. Today we've got quite a nice margin swim. It's actually sloping away quite quick, which allows you to pick your depth which you want to fish in. Today it's been 6, 8 degrees all week, but really warm now. So I've set my float at 18 inches and I'm going to look to go down and plumb up and try and find that depth. Hopefully that depth will be within 6, 8 inches of the bank. And then the fish can come into the peg and you'll catch them. You'll get less liners, less foul lookers and less miss bites. Today I've got a bit of cut down grass and I've also got a pipe coming in the margins that side, so I've got plenty of options of where I could fish. I might even want to fish both sides in the margins, just depending on how good I think my shallow line is going to be. I'm going to look to start to my right. I've got a bit of chopped down grass which puts just a little bit of cover between me and the fish. It's also a lot easier when I'm holding the pole to my right to constantly fish shallow with casters as well. So that just screams to me to start that side. So I'm going to drop my plummet in, set the float at 18 inches and just try and find that depth. As you can see there, about 5, 6 inches from the bank, it's about 18 inches. It's very steep, but that's not a problem for me. I can just lay my rig in and let it all sit up against it. So for me, that's about perfect. Now I feel when I'm fishing in that depth, with the bait I'm going to be fishing, I feel like I'm going to catch them, I'm not going to foul look them, I'm not going to miss many bites. Just want to talk you through the rig I'm going to use. I'll start right at the bottom. To start off with, we're using a size 16 pellet hook, which is quite a thick hook, but when I'm using floating expanders it kind of counterbalances the weight of the hook, which I'll go to in more detail later. I'm using a 10 centimeter hook length, which is quite short. I find when you're fishing in shallow water, 18, 20 inches, a short hook length can be really good. You get more positive indications, fewer miss bites. Because I'm only fishing in 18 inches of water and I'm fishing for F1s today, I've decided to put all the weight of my float, all the shot, just at the top of the hook length. It's really direct, it keeps the bait near the bottom, and also when it's really steep, I'll know if I'm fishing too much over depth because that bulk will just sit on the bottom. So I can adjust my rig and just get it at the right depth again. Sorry, 0.14 hook length to an 0.18 MVR mainline. The float I'm using, which is probably one of my favourite floats out of the whole MVR range is the MVR Finesse number 4. Now this float is the perfect length for fishing in that sort of depth of water. You don't want a float that's too long. You're only fishing in 18-20 inches of water. It's got a really nice bristle on it, nice and thick, but not too thick to see all the little indications, with a short wire stem, which actually makes it cock really quick. With the bulk being just at the top of the hook length and a short wire stem float, everything's going to settle really quickly, which is important when you're fishing in shallow water. The length of line between my float and the pole tip, I try and keep it as minimum as possible. I mean, most fisheries will have a rule on this. White Acres, for example, will have 8 inches. Other venues around the country will have different rules on it, 4, 6 inches. Just try and keep it as small as possible. I'm not using your conventional Dacron connectors today. What I've recently changed is just having a bead onto my elastic. Really neat, simple, and I just feel like it's just a little bit more direct to the float. An inch of Dacron is almost another inch of line between your float and your pole tip. So just a bead is just a touch more direct. One of the most important things about the setup here is the pot I'm using. I'm using a medium Maver squeezy pot, which are brilliant because you can just adjust them to how far you want them down your top kit. For me, about an inch gap between the top of the top kit and the pot is perfect. When you're fishing like that, all your loose bait's going to go down. You're going to keep everything really accurate. The most important thing about this pot though, what I've done, I've actually cut slots at the bottom of it. What this allows you to do is just actually drop the pot into the water, let the water flood in from the bottom of it, which will push the pellets out. The last thing you want to be doing is going in 18 inches of water and tapping the water like that and trying to get your pellets out. That's the last thing you ever want to be doing. You're making excess noise. You're just going to catch more if you can dip your pot under the water, let the water flood in and let the pellets come out. It really does make a massive difference. Now the other most important thing for me is the top kit I use. I'm only fishing short today, maybe 5-6 meters. I'm fishing for F1s between £1 and £4. The new F1 short stop kits are absolutely fantastic for me. They speed everything up. When you're netting the fish, you can strip your elastic out and literally get them to pop up right by your keep nets. You can net them really quickly, just speeds the whole process up. You're just so much more efficient. Last but not least, the elastic, the new Dual Cool Pro 8-11. Just the best F1 elastic I've ever used for this time of year. Really soft, really balanced, but really lots of backbone if you do a carp or a bigger F1. So as you can see, the setup itself really balanced, nice hook length, nice main line, short top kit, the right pole cup. All you got to do now is pick the right spot where you're going to look to fish in the right depth, and if you do get some bites with this setup and the way you've done everything, you will catch some fish. Right, we've started the day. I've just started fishing to my right, just past the cut grass, and we've had a great start. Literally, first chuck in, potted in some pellets, nice and quiet with those Kinder cups, and we've caught some real decent F1s. That's the thing I like about Jenny's Lake here at Tunnel Barn, is that the standard size of the F1 is just generally a little bit bigger. That one's not quite as big as the one we've been catching, but it's still a decent one all the same. It really is amazing just how quick you can catch once you get the process right. Right now, first thing I want to do after putting a fish into my net is I want to just remember all the time to keep building up my shallow line. It really is going to slow you down when you're fishing in the edges, but it really will pay dividends later on in the match. So I've put my expander on to start with. I'm going to fill my cup up. I'm going to give them a little squeeze into my cup just to make sure they don't bounce out on the way out. That's the great thing about using those Kinder cups. You can squeeze them in a bit harder than you would normal, but you know they're still going to come out because the slot's in the bottom of the cups. I fed once I put the fish in the net. I'm going to feed again now. And then just before I put my rig in, I'm going to feed again. So I've fed 3 times in the process of hooking a fish, getting it in and going back in my edge swim. If I'm not getting many bites quickly, then I'll feed again once my rig's in. Actually putting my rig in, drop the pellet out to the left because like I said, the bottom's quite steep. Just lower the pot in so the whole pot's submerged under the water. Let the water flood in from the top of the pot, and there you go. All the pellets out straight away, nice and quiet. Lift your rig up so it's nice and vertical, going straight down with those micro pellets, and lower your rig in. I've got a real short line between my pole tip and my float, so now I know everything's really direct, and we're waiting now, nice and patient for a positive bite. But one of the things I have learned about fishing in the margins is that when you're in the correct depth, say 18, 21, 22 inches, you don't have to be getting lots of indications and lots of bites. Because when you do get a bite, 90% of the time you hook it and it's in the mouth and it's a fish in the net. People that are fishing deeper water get it's almost like a false economy. You hook a fish, it comes off, you miss a bite, you come in. It's all about being, as in this F1 fishing, is all about being as efficient as possible. You don't have to catch quick to catch the biggest weights, but one thing you have to do is make sure everyone's in the mouth, everyone you get in the net, you hit all the bites. As soon as you start foul looking, missing bites, that's when you know you're not going to catch the biggest weight possible. As I put my pellets in, I can see the little pinpricks coming off of them. That's just a little bit of pellet on the oil, which is a good sign because I know I'm fishing right over my bait. Little liner then, so I know there's a fish coming into my peg. Just give it a little lift and drop every now and again. Make sure the pellet aren't wafted up into too shallow water. Keep everything dead straight because the bottom's so steep there. And you're looking for a bite now. Well, there you go. That didn't take long at all. No indications, no liners, no false bites. Just sat there, all of a sudden wallop. Straight under. Now I'm sure that's in the mouth. That really is one of the most important things. Another great little tip with these short stops, don't pick your landing net up straight away. Just strip your elastic out so you've got a sensible amount of elastic coming out the pole. So you know the fish is within netting range. And there you go, nice and easy. No need to be lifting your top kit up too early, picking your landing net up too early. Nice and efficient. But just remember, the whole time, fish is in the net. First thing you do, feed long. Bait up again, expander on the hook, fill your pot up, going out, feed again. So you really are working hard on building up the peg that you're not fishing. This will make the biggest difference when you come to your overall weight at the end of the day. Keep feeding. So I've fed again 3 times. That's getting fish in the area whilst I'm fishing somewhere else, and they're going to get really confident when I'm not fishing it. So there you go, drop your rig in again, pot under the water, let that water flood in, and away you go. Those pellets come out just superbly every time. So quiet, it's so cute when you're putting your bait in like that. Last thing you want to be doing is making lots of noise, banging about. There's no ripple there, it's 18 inches deep. Last thing you want to be doing is tapping your pole tip or your pot on the water, trying to get your bait out, jerking your hook bait about. It's just not right. You need to be direct, you need to be cute, you need to be quiet, and that's when you'll catch the biggest weights. Right, we've had a great start to the day. The edge lines lasted about 90 minutes, which is similar to the last match I fished here on Top Pool. 90 minutes, it all started to go a little bit funny, and that's the sort of time where you're going to be looking to go shallow. I fed it for 90 minutes as well, so hopefully when I first go out there, I should get a really, really good run. Now, the 2 rigs I've set up for shallow. The first one is just a conventional float, just like a normal rig with a little bulk and a length of line between my pole tip and my float. The other one is the jigger. Now, when it first came onto the scene, I was a little bit, I'm not too sure about it, But then I watched a guy the other day fishing with it, and it really was unbelievable. It opened my eyes massively. I'll talk you through the rig itself. Again, we're going for a Ghost F1 top kit, short, so there's not so much elastic, which is really important for when you're fishing shallow. The elastic itself is an 8-11 dual core. Great thing is about that elastic, I'm using it in the edge, I'm using it shallow, and I can use it across. The connector's a bead again, so you're really direct. All the bites that pull your elastic out, you're nice and direct to the bait, the hook bait. Now the rig itself. To start with, 022 mainline, which is a lot thicker than what I would normally use. But the advantage of using 022 mainline is it's really stiff. The thicker the line, the stiffer it is. And it keeps everything really vertical and direct when you're dropping the rig through the water. The first thing on the rig itself is 2 gripper stops. Now that's what the jigger's going to hit as you're lowering the hook bait down into the feed. Stop there and I can tap my tip. The jigger itself is just a homemade jigger sliding on the line, and at the bottom of the rig we got the shot. That's just 6 number 8s. That sits perfect with the jigger I've made. Now the hook length itself is at 4 inches long to a size 18 hook with a hair rig caster. I'm going to be throwing casters out of my hand, so I want to put a caster on the hook, but I also want to hair rig it. Hit a lot more bites with a hair rig. The only difference is when you're hair rigging casters is you've got to use a slightly bigger band and a red band. I just dyed them red so they just sit against the casters a little bit, so it's not stuck out so much. It's just a little bit cuter, a little bit more camouflaged. Now that's the rig itself. The reason why the rig works so well is that it's so direct. You can't miss bites with this. The whole time you're fishing with it, you're dropping the rig down through the hook bait and you're keeping everything really, really tight. At no point when you use this rig is there any slack. When you're lowering the hook bait down through the weight of the float, everything is 100% tight. The process I go through, the first thing I want to do is feed some casters so they hit on land on the water. Then I want to lower my casters, hook bait caster into the loose casters, and then start lowering the rig. That will sit on top of the water and just start lowering it. The trick with it is to lower your rig at the same speed as the casters are sinking. What I do is I throw some casters in the edge, try and get a visual guidance of how slow the casters are sinking, and then try and lower my rig the same speed. Once I lower it like that, lower it, if I don't get one that pulls the elastic out as the hook bait's falling, I just tap the surface of the water and just create a little bit more noise. And a lot of the time, if you don't get one as it's falling, you'll get one as you're tapping the elastic out again. With this rig, there's no striking involved. There's no lifting and dropping. All you're doing is lowering the rig in vertical the whole time. And that's why it's so good. You don't miss bites, you don't foul hook fish. When I was fishing in the edge, I mentioned about being as efficient as possible, fishing the correct depth to eliminate foul looking and eliminate missed bites. Well, this rig does it for you. When you're fishing shallow, fish with this rig. If you can catch on it, it's the best way of catching the biggest weights. Yeah, like I expected, there was a few fish out there waiting for me. I fed it for like 90 minutes now, so you would have thought when first going in I'll have a good run. I just fed like a big handful of casters then, started lowering my rig in, and as I thought with the jigger, the elastic was out. No striking, no missing bites involved. So I'll just talk you through, oh, that one's just come off in the net. But I'll just talk you through what I do now. When I hooked that fish, I fed casters straight away to try and bring some fish back into the peg. But now I've netted the fish is in the net, I'll throw again. You can lift the fish out, plop it into the net. Sometimes you don't have to rebait up with this hair rig caster, but that time, because the hook come out, I've had to rebait up. Slot a caster on. Feed again. So now I've fed 3 times whilst I'm not fishing, whilst I'm playing the fish, whilst I'm unhooking. So all the time I'm working really hard trying to keep fish in my peg whilst I'm not fishing for them. So once I get out there, I'll look to feed straight away and then start lowering my rigging right in the middle. One little thing, when you're throwing your casters, just try and be as accurate as possible. Sometimes a catapult can be good, but it's a lot slower, a catapult. If you can throw casters 10, 11 meters out your hand, nice and accurate, and there you go. Straight again, pole over, elastic's out. So I've hooked it, try and get it out of your swim. Throw some casters to get some fish back in your peg. And you're back in another one. But you can see with these jiggers, just how efficient and how quick it is. No missing bites, everyone's in the mouth. Big fish as well. So again, I've got the fish in the net. I'll just pop that one in because he's being well behaved. And then straight away, I'm feeding again. Make sure the hook bait's all right, but it was that time. Didn't have to rebait up with the hair rig, and I'm out again. So I'm feeding 2, 3, 4 times whilst I'm playing, whilst I'm unhooking. Once I'm out there, I'm gonna look to feed again. That dropped a little bit short, that feed. Don't be worried if it's dropping a little bit short. Just make sure you get it right on your float, that's bang on. So now I'm gonna drop my rig straight in and just try and lower that caster down at the same speed as your loose casters. Everything's vertical, everything's nice and tight. At any one time, if an F1 takes that hook bait now, it's going to pull the elastic out. I'm going to repeat the process because I had a little niggle then, I think it might have been a roach. Feed some bait and just start lowering it in again. When you get to the maximum depth of your rig, just start tapping the water with your pole tip if it's allowed on the venue. If the elastic's, oh there you go, see elastic's out again. Get it out of your peg, feed some more casters and just try and keep the process going. But you can see why it's just so efficient. You're not missing bites, you're not foul looking. Elastic's out every chuck. All big fish as well. As soon as you get the fish in the net, let him kick about, let him tire out a bit. Feed again. So now I'm working really hard trying to keep fish in my peg. Unhook him, that time the caster come off. So what we're going to do, we're going to feed. Just make sure there's some fish out there waiting for us. Slip the caster on. It's a little bit fiddly with casters, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it takes you 10, 20 seconds to put them on. If it's the right bait, it's the right bait. So we're going to feed again. Go out. Get your hook, get your rig in position. Try and keep these casts as accurate as possible. Throw them in again. And then just start lowering. Just try and imagine that your hook bait is falling exactly the same speed as the loose casters. Oh, little niggle there. You just got to try and get yourself into a rhythm. And feeding again, lowering again. If you don't, like I said before, if you don't get a bite, just start tapping. And there we go, elastic's out again. But you can really see once you get into a rhythm and you get the process dead right, you can just catch a massive weight. That was 4 in a couple of minutes, you know, and they're all 2 to 3 pound. So you don't have to rush things, you don't have to be going like a madman. If you get everything dead right, you get your rig right, you get your elastics right, your top kits right, you get your feeding right, that's how you catch the biggest weights. We've had a good hour to 90 minutes fishing on the jigger, and to be honest, it's been absolutely ridiculous. I've had my elastic ripped out every single chuck, but I am pleasure fishing on a very good lake, on a very good peg on the lake. So, and I fed it for 90 minutes, so you sort of expect it. It has been ridiculous though. I was catching at a rate where you're going to catch a minimum of 200 pound, probably 250, 260. The other rig I've set up, like I mentioned before, is a little bit more of a conventional rig. If you haven't got jiggers, you don't want to use them, then this is more of the rig for you. To start with, exactly the same as on the jigger, the hook end, size 18 hook, red band, big band for banding the casters so it's easy to slip in. A 10 centimetre hook length, exactly the same as on the jigger. The main line itself is not quite as thick as the jigger. We're going to go down to 18. Because we're not lowering it vertically, we're just laying the rig in a little bit different, a slightly thinner main line, just a little bit nicer. What I have done is I've put the bulk right at the top of the hook length, exactly the same as when we're fishing in the edge. What this allows me to do is rotate the rig. If I rotate the rig over, slap it over, that little bulk is making a nice little plop and making a little bit of disturbance on the surface of the water and making a nice bit of noise, so it attracts the fish into a small area where your hook bait is. Your main line itself, like I said, 018, going up to the float. The float is a finesse 4, exactly the same as what we used in the margin. Just a perfect all-round float for F1s, perfect bristle, little short wire stem so it cocks immediately to a very short line between your pole tip and your float. Like I said, when I'm fishing in the margins, I want to shorten it down to right, so the minimal amount of lines the rules allow. So say the rules are 4 inches of line between your pole tip and your float, I'll fish 4 inches. The elastic 8 to 11, everything 8 to 11 for F1 fishing, with another short stop Ghost F1 kit. The biggest advantage or disadvantage of fishing with this rig is, like I mentioned, the length of line between your pole tip and your float has got to be a certain length, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches. What this doesn't allow you to do is fish at different depths. Because I always want my float as close to my pole tip as possible, I can't adjust the rig. I can't slide my float down 4 or 5 inches if I want to come shallower, because then I've got too much line between my pole tip and my float. Or likewise, I can't slide my float up to make it a bit deeper. So what I do is actually have 4 or 5 different rigs set up. I actually measure them to make sure they're exactly the right length, but this rig here, the float itself is set at 24 inches. On a day like today, I'll have another one set up at 20 inches, another one set up at 17 inches, and maybe one at 12 inches. That way, you're covering your options with depths via keeping the line the same length. I have 3 or 4 jiggers set up, 3 or 4 of these conventional floats set up. I leave them set up in my rod case so I can get to my peg, I can take them out of my rod case, put them straight onto my roost, and away you go. All my rigs are covered for shallow fishing. When fishing venues like Tunnel Barn Farm, and you need to catch in the excess of 250 pounds to win the matches here, one of the most important things for me is that you're quick and efficient and tidy. I mentioned earlier about fishing in certain ways to make you quick and make you efficient. It's exactly the same with your setup. I'm very particular about the way I set up. To start off with, my landing net handle. First of all, I've got a pole roller at the back end of it and a little clip just on the side of my side tray, so that when I'm not using it, I can lean it on the pole roller, put it in the clip, and everything's nice and secure. It's not going to blow away, it's not going to roll in, I'm not going to have to pick it up off the floor. Everything's nice and secure. Once I finish using it, take the fish out, back into his clip. It's always in the same position. It just becomes memory, habit. You know exactly where your landing net is. You can just grab it, net the fish back in position. Really important. Start on this side, the side tray itself, big Maver side tray. I don't want lots of little bait boxes scattered everywhere. I want everything on one tray, so I know exactly what's going on, what I'm using, everything's to hand. The bait tubs for me is really important as well. I mean, today I could have used in excess of 8 to 10 pints of casters. I don't want 4 bait boxes scattered about with just the same bait in. With the new Maver EVA bowls, I can put 10, 12 pints of casters in this bowl and just have them there. I don't have to mess about moving bait boxes around, so when I'm finished with one I have to move the other. Everything's in there, it's ready to go for the full 5 hours. Just allows you more time to think about what's going on in your peg. Slightly smaller ones for different baits like pellets and corn, meat, stuff like that. I've got my towel there so I can always keep my hands dry if I'm really catching really quickly like I have done today. One of the biggest things for my setup as well is my keep nets. That's the new MVR compact keep net. Today at Tunnel Barn we've got a net limit of £100, so most of the time you can get away with 2, if you are pushing it 3 keep nets, which is absolutely fine to get them all spaced in. But when you go to venues such as Gold Valley, you've got a £50 net limit, so you might need 4 or 5 keep nets in. With the new MVR compacts you can clip 4 to 5 keep nets on the new keep net bar and just have them all in front of you. It's not taking up too much room, it's all nice and neat. Also, the great thing about these new keep nets, the material, the colour, it's black. I don't want to use white, grey keep nets. The last thing I ever want to do when I'm fishing 4 or 5 metres out is have a white keep or grey keep net 3 metres along the bottom. I want a black keep net and I want to pin it back. I want to make sure everything's cute and as camouflaged as possible. Moving on to this side, first of all, I've got my pole sock, really important, and I've got my pole roller. I've got my pole roller positioned in the right place so that when I ship out it's not bumping off or it's not too far back where I risk breaking the pole when I'm shipping back. Pole roller's in the right position, pole sock there, 100% with the right pole roller, XL flatbed competition. The pole roller's not going to blow over, it's got 4 big legs on and the pole's not going to blow out of the roller. It's just impossible to happen. I've got my pole sock there, so as soon as I take my top kit off I can just whack my pole straight into there. Everything's nice and secure, forget about your pole. After your top kit's off, just forget about it. Always in the same position so you build up a memory of where it is and away you go. One of the best bits of kit that I've just started using is the new MVR feeder side tray. Now when you're fishing and you're using baits that you can't get wet, i.e. maggots, if it does start to rain, which happens a lot in England, you can just slot them straight into there, keep it all nice and dry until the rain stops. Just a real nice thing, added addition to my range, just to keep stuff dry. Or if you have got a secret bait and you don't want your partner next door seeing what you're using, you can just slot it in there, keep everything hidden away and nice. My rig roost, I've got a lot of top kits set up today, excess of 8, 10, 12 rigs for fishing shallow and in the margins. Last thing I want to be doing is picking up off the ground where they've blown away, and I want to know exactly which one's what, so I can write on the bottom of the top kit what they are. I can see them all just there, and I can pick up the one that I need for that time, and it just makes everything a little bit quicker. It speeds me up a lot. I got all my spare pole sections in a position where they can't blow away, next to here, so they can't blow away, they're locked in position. All round, as you can see, everything's nice and locked into position. The one other major thing that I think is really important is keeping everything as low as possible. As you can see here, the new MVR Maver seat box, I've just adapted it a touch from standard as you would buy it. I've made everything just a touch lower. I've just cut down the legs a bit and I've just adjusted the rig trays so they're just at the right height for my body. But everything is really low. Now that's important for me when you're netting F1s. The last thing you want to be doing is netting an F1 and bringing it miles out of the water onto your lap. If you're nice and low as possible like I am today, you can just quickly net it out of the water and it's straight in your lap. You can feed quicker. Everything's just a little bit nicer. And all round really, when I get my setup correct and I'm happy with it and I look good, my confidence is high and I want to go fishing more, which will lead me to catching more fish. We've had a great start to the day in the margins, catching probably 20 to 25 fish. And then, to be honest, shallow's been ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. throwing casters in, getting the elastics pulled out. So many fish in the area. 24 inches seems to be the best depth from the jigger, and the jigger egg seems to be very, very good. But to end the day, what I've decided to do, just have a look across against the fire margins, because if you were in a situation where you couldn't catch shallow and you couldn't catch in the margins, this is what you'd be left to do. I can't quite get into the depth that I want to get into. I want to try and get into the same depth as what I did in the margins, 18-20 inches, but I can't quite get into that. I'm probably in 2.5 foot there, which is a bit deep, but we've got some fire cover, we've got some rushes, so I'm sure we'll still get some bites. We might get a few missed bites, we might get an odd foul looker, but in a situation where you've got to go across, you've just got to part with that. Getting a few indications straight away. I'm feeding it exactly the same as what I did in the edge. Soft pellets, micros with expanders on. I really do think when you're fishing for F1s in this shallower water, that is the best way of fishing. Maybe if there was some more carp, hard pellets would be very good, sprinkling in 4-6 hard pellets. But for this time of year, in the shallower water, these soft pellets do really work well. I've fed then, I've had some indications, but I've not had a proper bite. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to come back and try feeding again. Try and really get some fish in my peg competing on the bottom. That's one thing you have got to do when you're fishing and feeding like this, is not be scared to come in and fill your pot back up again. I had some indications, but no proper bites. Try and get a window of opportunity. After you feed, it'll always take a certain amount of time to get some bites, and that's your window of opportunity. Try and catch one. If you don't catch one in, do it again. Repeat the process, almost like you're fishing shallow. I'm using the same kinder pot as I was in the margins, just letting the water flush in. Straight away fish onto that. Hopefully we can get some. What happens normally when you start a new line, what can happen when you start feeding, the fish can be quite giddy and they can come into your bait and you not get proper bites, but as you keep fishing and keep feeding, it all starts to settle down a touch. There we go. A bite really quickly then. See, that was within 20-30 seconds of feeding, we're into a fish. That's what's so good about fishing and feeding with these kinder pots. You're keeping everything really accurate. You're trying your best to keep everything on the bottom. I'm using a slightly bigger float, which I'll go into more detail in a minute, because obviously it is a bit deeper. Another big F1. Obviously, when match situation, you'll be trying to catch in the margins and close to you shallow. But this is really a great method for when you're just trying to win the lake, win your section, and just trying to cap off a day. Really great method, 14.5 meters wide, just to catch the last few fish in your peg. Well, I've just gone across, caught a couple of big F1s. I'm just going to take this opportunity to show you the rig. It has changed slightly because of the depth of the water. If I was fishing in 18-20 inches of water, I'd fish exactly the same as what I did in the margins. But we're probably getting on for 3 foot now. It's not possible to get into that shallow water. So I just want to show you the differences in the rigs. To start with, we've gone for a size 16 pellet hook. Again, with the 4-inch hook length. Exactly the same as what we were fishing in the margins. The first main difference is the bulk of shot I've not got at the top of the hook length. I've actually just strung it out shirt button style. Because it's a little bit deeper, I don't want my bait falling vertically to the bottom straight away. I just want to give it a little bit of allowance where you can catch a few fish on the drop. The float itself is slightly a bit bigger, so it's going to take a little bit more shot. We've got 5 number 9s on this shot, as to the edge rig we had 3. So stringing it out is not such a big weight when the fish take the take the hook bait. There's not so much resistance on them. Again, we've gone for the same main line, 018 MVR main line. The float is a Maver MVR Finesse 3. It's slightly longer than the one I was using in the margins, which make it a little bit better for when deeper water, so a little bit more stable. The same again, a wire stem to make it really stable. Same bristle, but a little bit longer. Slightly, everything's just got to be in proportion. With the shallower water, we've gone for the smaller float. Just a bit deeper, we've gone for a slightly longer float. The length of line between the pole tip and the float, a little bit longer again. Fishing 5 meters in the margin is very different to fishing 14.5 meters along there. Just give yourself a little bit of allowance to move the pole tip. So I've probably gone for a line 8 inches then. And then everything else of the setup is very similar to in the margins. 8 to 11 elastic for everything. We've got the same pot, kinder pot, medium squeezy pot with the slots cut out, and the one piece F1 top kit. Few changes, but I'm just still keeping everything in proportion. Slightly deeper water, slightly different rig, but still very similar results. Well, there you go, guys. We've had a great start to the day. Caught plenty of fish in the margins. Then it's been ridiculous shallow, and then we've ended the day fishing across with pellets. We've had a good run at the end as well. I really enjoyed my day here at Tunnel Barn. I hope you guys have as well. Catch me next time for more summer times tackle and tips. We've started the day in the margins, had a good run, then we've gone shallow and it's been amazing. We've caught all day. Then we've capped the day off by going long against the island and we've caught well there. All round, it's been a very enjoyable day. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. All that's left to do is unload all my keep nets back into the water, and I'll see you next time.